Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey there.
So, today we are doing something a little different, and honestly, it's going to require a bit of a gear shift.
Yeah, for sure. We're taking a stack of source material that looks, on the surface, like something you've heard 1,000 times.
Exactly. We're talking about Genesis chapters 25 and 26.
Right. The story of Isaac, Rebekah, and the twins, Jacob and Esau.
And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I know this. Jacob wears the fur, gets the blessing, Esau wants soup, Isaac gets old. You really need to hit the pause button on your assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Because the text we are actually analyzing today isn't a history book. It's not about what happened.
Not even a little bit. It's a commentary titled Madame Guyon, Faith and the Life of Isaac.
And Madame Guyon, she was a 17th century French mystic. She actually spent a good chunk of her life in prison because her ideas were considered, let's say, pretty dangerous.
Dangerous.
Yeah. And to her, the Bible wasn't a record of things that happened 4,000 years ago. It was a coded map.
A map of the inner life, as she calls it.
Precisely. She treats this entire narrative, every famine, every bowl of lentils, as an allegory.
An allegory for what?
For the psychological and spiritual transformation of a believer. It's all happening inside you.
Okay, so that's our mission today. We are going to decode that map. We're going to look at how she uses these figures to explain some incredibly complex spiritual concepts, things like naked faith, abandonment, and what she calls the apostolic life.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are sticking strictly to the excerpts from Guyon that we have.
Right. This isn't a modern theological critique or a historical analysis.
You know, we are diving into her world. And in her world, things like internal war and starvation and even being persecuted, they are not problems to be fixed.
They're what? Tools?
They're necessary mechanisms for growth. She completely flips the script on almost everything.
Okay, so let's jump in. The text opens, interestingly enough, with a death and a will. We're in Genesis 25. Abraham's about to die.
And, usually we just skip over the estate planning part of the Bible. It seems like a footnote.
Right, who gets what? But Guyon stops us right here. The text mentions Abraham had other children with concubines, correct?
Yes, with Keturah and others. He had a lot of kids.
But the distribution of his assets is, well, it's not exactly equitable.
Not at all. He gives gifts to the sons of the concubines, and then he sends them away.
Sends them away. But to Isaac.
To Isaac, he gives everything.
Everything. And this is the first major key in Guyon's code.
This is where she starts decoding. She identifies Abraham as the figure of faith. He's the starting point for the spiritual journey.
Okay, Abraham is faith. So who is Isaac?
Isaac represents something deeper. She calls it naked faith. Or, and this is a key term for her, abandonment.
Okay, we need to unpack abandonment. In modern English, it sounds like trauma, like being left behind.
It has a really negative connotation for us, doesn't it? But for the mystics, and especially for Guyon, abandonment is an active state. It's the act of surrendering yourself entirely to God.
So you've abandoned your own will.
You've abandoned your own agenda. You've completely let go of the steering wheel. That's Isaac. He is the person who has totally surrendered.
Okay, so you have Isaac, who is abandonment, and then you have the other kids, the sons of the concubines.
Right. And Guyon says they represent distinct virtues or gifts. Maybe it's a spiritual high, a moment of great insight, a specific talent, or even a miraculous ability.
So Abraham, or faith, gives them these gifts. They get the cool stuff.
They get the cool stuff, but they get sent away.
That's the key.
That's the key. They get the gifts, but they don't get the father. They don't live in the house. And Guyon is making a really, really stark point here.
Which is what?
You can have spiritual gifts. You can be incredibly talented. You can have amazing experiences. But if you are clinging to those things for your identity...
You're a child of the concubine.
In her framework, yes, you're not the heir.
That is heavy. It's like she's saying the gifts themselves can actually get in the way of the real inheritance.
They can become supports, things that we lean on instead of leaning on God. The core insight here, for her, is that you can't fully enjoy God, who is the true inheritance, until you are stripped of all supports and all self-interest.
So Isaac is unique not because he's special or talented, but because he has nothing.
He is the child of promise. He receives everything precisely because he claims nothing for himself.
And then the text says Abraham dies. Abraham breathed his last and was gathered to his people. And Guyon reads this as the death of faith, which, again, to a modern ear, sounds like a crisis. Like, oh no, I lost my faith.
It sounds like becoming an atheist. But in her system, it's a graduation, it's a promotion.
How so?
Think of it this way. Faith is a method. It's a roadmap. You use a map when you're trying to get somewhere you haven't been before. But what happens when you arrive at the destination?
You put the map away. You don't need it anymore.
Exactly. The map dissolves into the territory. Guyon argues that when Abraham, who is faith, dies, the method fades away because it's absorbed into the reality of the thing itself. She says Abraham enters into Isaac, the way enters into the believer, and then Isaac enters into God. It's a kind of union.
So you stop trying to believe and you just start being. You start existing in the reality.
You stop striving, you stop doing faith, you just are. And she connects this to where Isaac chooses to live after his father dies. He settles at a well.
A well called Bir Lahai-Roi.
Which is a mouthful.
It is.
But the translation is, it's beautiful. It means something like the well of him that liveth and seeth, or the living and seeing well.
That sounds less like a GPS location and more like a state of mind.
That's exactly how she reads it. It's not a place, it's a state of being. Isaac lives at the source. He isn't traveling to get water anymore. He resides at the well.
So it signifies a state where the believer is living and seeing God directly.
Yes. There's no more distance. There's no more, I hope this is true. It's just pure, unmediated vision and life.
This leads us to a concept she introduces right around this section, which I found totally fascinating because I've never heard it defined this way.
Yeah.
The apostolic life.
Yes. This is the goal. This is the end game in our system.
Usually when I hear apostolic, I think of busyness. Missionaries, church planting, constant travel, preaching to crowds.
External activity, yeah.
But her definition seems to be almost entirely about an internal state.
Well, it's a paradox. She defines the apostolic life as a state where a person is simultaneously simple and complex.
Okay, break that down for me. How can you be simple and complex at the same time?
Internally, you are simple. That means you are unified. You're at rest. You are sitting at that, living and seeing well, totally connected to God. There's no noise inside your head.
Okay, so that's the simple part. What's the complex part?
Outwardly, you're complex. You are active in the world. You're dealing with people. You're handling logistics. You're moving through your day-to-day life.
So the chaos of the external world doesn't touch the silence of the internal world.
That's it. She uses God himself as the analogy. I mean, think about it. God runs the entire universe. Talk about complexity. He's keeping galaxies spinning and atoms vibrating. But does God stress out? Does he lose his peace?
No, of course not.
He acts without ever leaving his own state of eternal rest. Guyon says the apostolic person becomes like that. They act outwardly without breaking their internal union with God.
I love that image. It's like being the eye of the hurricane. You carry the con with you wherever you go.
Exactly.
But as we move into the next section of the text, we find out that getting to this state of unity is, well, violent. Because Isaac doesn't stay alone. He has a wife, Rebecca.
And this is where the psychological drama really, really kicks in.
So in Guyon's code, who is Rebecca? What does she represent?
Rebecca represents love.
Okay, so we have Isaac, who is naked faith, married to Rebecca, who is love.
That sounds like a power couple.
You'd think so, but there's a problem. Love is barren.
Yeah.
Initially, Rebecca can't produce anything.
She can't have children.
Right. And Guyon notes that she remains barren until the environment, which is her code for God, wakes her up to bear fruit. And when she finally conceives, it is not a peaceful pregnancy.
No, it's a war zone. She has twins, and they are literally fighting inside the womb. 2 nations are in thy womb. Guyon takes this as a literal description of the human soul, and she asks a very provocative question. Why does God allow love, Rebecca, to give birth to a sinner?
Because one of those twins is Esau, and he is. He's problematic from the start.
He is. And the other is Jacob. Guyon interprets this whole struggle as the internal war between nature and grace.
Esau is nature, Jacob is grace.
Yes. And let's look at the character analysis she does here because it's so vivid. Esau comes out first.
He does, and he's described as red and hairy.
And Guyon just leaps on these details. She sees the redness and the hair as signs of a fierce, almost animalistic nature.
So Esau represents what she calls the fallen nature.
Exactly. He is the slave of his own desires. He's a hunter. He's always out in the field. He's restless. He's completely obsessed with the external world.
He's the part of us that needs the next dopamine hit, the part that wants to consume.
That's a perfect way to put it. And then you have Jacob.
Jacob is quiet. She lives in tents.
Right. And Guyon says this represents the spirit of solitude, of prayer, of retreating into God. While Esau is out chasing the next thrill, Jacob is inside, dwelling in the presence. He prefigures Jesus Christ, the inner man.
But here is the thing that really struck me in her analysis, and it's kind of terrifying. She doesn't just say Esau is bad, get rid of him.
No, not at all.
She says Esau is necessary.
That is the core of her theology of suffering. She argues that the fallen nature, Esau, is created specifically to test and to purify the elect nature, Jacob.
So the internal struggle, this civil war in our souls, it isn't a mistake. It's not a sign that we're failing.
No. She says the cross, and by that she means suffering, persecution, struggle, is prenatal.
Prenatal, wow.
It is woven into the very fabric of spiritual growth. You cannot have the holy nation of Jacob without the fallen nation of Esau to wrestle against it. The constant attacks are what make the elect nature strong.
So if you're feeling that internal conflict, that's not a bug, it's a feature. That's the mechanism working.
Exactly. The elect are attacked even before they are born.
Now, this whole dynamic gets even messier when we look at the parents. Because usually we think of Isaac as the great patriarch, the hero of the story, but Guyon actually calls him out here.
It's a very subtle but very sharp critique. The Bible says that Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game.
Because he liked the venison stew.
Right, and Guyon just circles that phrase and says, look at this, self-interest.
Even in the great man of faith.
Even a holy man like Isaac, who represents naked faith, can have a blind spot. His love was tainted by what he could get from Esau.
Yeah.
He liked the flavor of the wild game.
That is so human. I know this kid is a disaster, but man, he makes a good stew.
It is. And Guyon warns that even the holiest people make mistakes when their choices are influenced by their own personal gain or pleasure.
Whereas Rebecca
loved Jacob.
And there's no reason given.
No reason. And Guyon argues her love was pure. It wasn't based on what Jacob gave her. It was based on who Jacob was. It was aligned with justice and with God's will. So in this one specific instance, love, who is Rebecca, saw more clearly than faith, who is Isaac.
Which brings us to probably the most famous scene in this entire saga.
The red soup.
The mess of pottage. Esau comes in from the field, he's starving, or at least he thinks he is, and he sells his birthright, his entire future status.
For a bowl of red lentil soup.
It is the ultimate act of instant gratification.
It really is. But Guyon takes this moment to talk about something bigger. She talks about the sovereignty of God.
How does that fit in here?
Well, she looks at the situation and she admits this is irrational.
Right.
No sane person trades a kingdom for a snack. It seems ill-advised and foolish.
Totally.
But she argues that God uses human flaws, Esau's gluttony, his impulsiveness, his short-sightedness, to fulfill the divine plan.
So God needed the birthright to go to Jacob anyway, and he just used Esau's own stupidity to make it happen.
Essentially, yes. She says God guides all things towards their end without violating our free will. Esau freely chose the soup. He wasn't forced. But God, in his providence, wove that foolish choice into the grand tapestry of history.
You know, that's actually really comforting.
It is, isn't it?
Because it implies that even my most embarrassing mistakes, or the times I've just acted like a complete idiot, are not outside of God's ability to use for good.
That's a huge theme for Guyon. The lesson is that the whole tapestry serves God's ultimate design, even if some of the individual threads look like terrible mistakes to us up close.
Okay, so Isaac has his inheritance, the twins are at war, the birthright has shifted, and then Genesis 26 hits us with a major crisis, and there was a famine in the land.
A famine. Now remember, we're reading a map of the soul, so we are not talking about a shortage of wheat.
So what kind of famine is this then?
Guyon says there are two types. There's the physical external famine, sure, but she's really talking about a spiritual one, the total deprivation of what seems necessary.
A spiritual dry spell.
A drought. The feeling that God has completely left the building, the gifts are gone, the comfort is gone, that living and seeing well feels totally dry.
And Isaac's famine represents that stage where the soul is stripped of all comfort.
To learn how to lose itself completely in God.
And what is the natural human instinct when that happens? When you're in a famine?
To run, to escape.
To go down to Egypt.
Exactly. In the Bible, Egypt almost always represents the world, or sensory comfort, or trying to solve things with human help. So Isaac thinks, there's food in Egypt, I'll just go there.
But God appears and gives him a very specific command.
Yes. Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of.
In other words, stay in the famine.
Stay in the deprivation. Guyon calls this the prohibition of Egypt. She says when you are in a period of suffering or stripping, your instinct is always to escape, to distract yourself.
To binge watch something, to eat something, to call a friend and complain.
To find any human solution. But the command is to stay put,
Why? I mean, what is the benefit of just sitting in the starvation?
Transformation. She says if you stay in that place of suffering, if you accept the prohibition and don't run to Egypt, God promises to mold you into his image. You lose yourself, but you find God.
And there's a promise attached to this command, right?
A huge one. The promise that all nations will be blessed through his seed. And Guyon connects this directly to Christ. The ultimate fruitfulness only comes after we have endured the famine without running away.
So Isaac stays, he obeys, but he's not perfect because he goes to Gerar and he pulls a move that is, frankly, pretty sketchy.
Dastardly stratagem.
He tells the local Philistines that Rebekah is his sister, not his wife.
Right, because he's afraid they'll kill him to take her because she's beautiful.
And his father, Abraham, did the exact same thing. It runs in the family. Most commentaries I've read just say Isaac is a coward here. He's lying to save his own skin.
That is the standard interpretation. He sacrificed his wife's safety and dignity for his own. But Guyon, she defends him.
She defends the lie. How?
Well, first, she doesn't call it a lie. This is one of the most surprising parts of her text. She gets a bit technical and points out that in Hebrew culture, the term brother or sister was often used for close relatives, and they were first cousins.
That feels like a bit of a stretch.
It is a bit. But her main argument is deeper than that. She calls it an act of mystery and prudence.
Prudence? It looks like cowardice.
But think about the stakes. God just promised Isaac that he would be the father of many nations, that the seed of promise would come through him. If Isaac gets himself killed by being bluntly honest before the time is right, he throws away God's entire plan.
Okay, yeah.
So Guyon argues that he used a holy freedom to conceal the truth in order to preserve the legacy God had given him.
So it was strategic ambiguity, not a cowardly lie.
That's her take. And look at the result. The king, Abimelech, eventually looks out a window, sees them being affectionate, and realizes the truth. He confronts Isaac. But does he kill him?
No, he does the opposite.
The opposite. He issues a royal decree. He says, "He that touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death."
So the deception, or the prudence as she calls it, actually resulted in a royal protection order.
That's Guyon's point. She says God protected Isaac through this strange maneuver. Even if it looked like a mistake or a weakness, God used it to build a wall of protection around him and Rebekah.
It's another example of how the apostolic person is protected by God in ways that don't always make sense to the outside observer.
Exactly.
Okay, so Isaac survives the famine, he survives the threat to his life, and now he starts farming. And this is where the story really shifts from just survival to massive abundance.
Yes, Genesis 26, verse 12. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year an hundredfold.
A hundredfold harvest. In a time of famine, that's unbelievable.
And this represents the fruit of the apostolic life. After the internal rest, after the stripping, after enduring the famine, there is this explosion of fruitfulness. But, and there's always a but in this.
Success breeds envy.
Always. The Philistines get jealous. Well, Guyon notes that ordinary people working for themselves out of their own strength, get jealous of the spiritual person because it looks like God blesses his own work way more than human effort. Doesn't seem fair. Isaac barely tries, and he gets a hundredfold. They toil all year and get less.
And that envy turns into active sabotage.
It does. Which brings us to the War of the Wells.
This is, for me, the climax of her entire interpretation.
I agree. The Philistines go around and they fill up all the wells that Abraham, Isaac's father, had dug. They fill them with earth.
The imagery there is just so rich. What does it mean in the map of the soul?
Think about what a well is. It's a source of life. It's life-giving water in the middle of a desert. Guyon says the wells represent the sources of faith and truth that were discovered by the fathers, the ancient, pure truths of the faith.
And the earth. The dirt they use to clog them.
Malicious lies, earthly concerns, heresies. The persecutors, the world, try to clog up the pure water of faith with earth. They try to make the truth inaccessible by piling distractions and slanders and false doctrines on top of it.
So the real goal of persecution isn't just to hurt the person, it's to cut off their spiritual source.
Precisely. To stop the flow of the Spirit. So Isaac's job is to redig these wells. And notice a very specific detail that Guyon highlights. He gives them the same names his father Abraham used.
He doesn't rebrand them. He doesn't call them Isaac's super well or new and improved water.
No, because true faith doesn't need to invent new things. It uncovers the ancient things. Guyon is very conservative here. She says the apostolic spirit doesn't need to be novel. It needs to be true. It just restores the original essence.
But the Philistines are not having it. Isaac digs a well, and they immediately fight him for it. And this sets up a strategy of conflict resolution that is, well, it's frustratingly passive.
It's the strategy of non-resistance, and it's radical.
Walk us through the progression of these wells.
Okay, so Isaac's servants dig in the valley. They find a spring of running water. But the herdsmen of Gerar come out and they say, no, the water is ours.
What does Isaac do? Does he fight for his rights? Does he show them the royal decree?
No. He names the well Esek, which means contention or dispute. And he just leaves. He yields the entire investment. He walks away.
Okay, so he moves on.
He moves on. He digs another well, and they fight him for that one, too. He names that one Sitna, which implies enmity or hatred. The conflict is actually getting worse.
Most people by this point would be arming their servants. This is my property. I have a right to be here. We are standing our ground.
Of course, justice is on his side, but Isaac leaves again, and this is Guyon's crucial lesson. She says the man of God never fights back. He retreats until he finds peace.
That is incredibly hard to hear. It feels like weakness. It feels like being a doormat.
To the world, absolutely. But listen to her reasoning. She writes, total love involves giving up one's rights. If you value your own interest, your property, your sense of fairness, more than you value peace, you have lost love.
So she's saying that winning the argument is less important than maintaining the internal state of love and peace.
That's everything. And look at what happens next. He moves further away, he digs the third well, and this time, nobody fights him for it.
And he names it Rehoboth,
which means broad places or room. He says, now the Lord has made room for us.
So by yielding, he actually found a space where he could be free.
Guyon calls this the large soul. She says because Isaac's soul was broad, like Rehoboth, external circumstances couldn't cramp him. He didn't need that specific first well. He didn't need the second one. He carried the capacity for water within him. He just needed to find a place of peace to let it out.
And she also treats this as a practical strategy for, evangelism.
She does. She basically says, only dig where there is no contention. If people want to fight you about theology or argue about doctrine, just move on. Don't cast your pearls before swine.
Because God is a Prince of Peace, and he dwells in peace.
Right. You cannot establish the kingdom of God through a brawl.
That is a direct challenge to the way we usually do things, especially on the internet. We think we have to stay and defend the truth.
And Guyon would say the truth defends itself. You just keep digging until you find the people who are thirsty, not the people who are just angry.
And this path of non-resistance leads to the final blessing. After he settles at Rehoboth, God appears to him at a place called Beersheba.
The timing is so vital here. God appears after Isaac gives up the contention. Guyon calls this the principle of compensation.
How does that work?
She writes, the more we abandon ourselves, the closer God approaches. God compensates for everything we give up. Because Isaac didn't fight for the first two wells, God shows up at the fourth location personally to bless him directly.
So by losing the arguments, he won the abundance.
By losing the wells, he gained the source of all water.
And then his servants find even more water there, too.
Yes. They name that final well Sheba, which can mean oath, or, more beautifully, abundance. It signifies unlimited spiritual fruitfulness for those who follow this radical path of non-resistance and abandonment.
It really is a complete inversion of how we normally operate.
Yeah.
We think we have to secure our inheritance, fight our internal demons with willpower, escape our famines, and defend our wells to the death.
And Guyon's map says, no. Surrender the inheritance to get the giver. Let the internal war purify you. Stay in the famine to be transformed. And yield the wells to find true abundance.
The central message is literally victory through yielding.
It's strength through abandonment. It looks like foolishness to the world, just like trading a birthright for soup looks foolish, or letting someone steal your well looks foolish. But Guyon insists that this folly is actually the wisdom of God.
It's a map that leads to a place of total rest and fruitfulness, but the journey there is it's harrowing.
It is. It requires a truly naked faith.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a pretty challenging picture. It's not a passive life. Isaac was digging wells like crazy, but it's a non-resistant life.
It's active surrender. That's the apostolic balance she talks about.
Here's a thought I want to leave you with, based on all of this. We talked about how Guyon views mistakes, Isaac's bias for Esau, the lie to the king, as things God just weaves into his plan. And we talked about the Philistines throwing dirt in the wells.
Right, the sabotage.
If even our flaws, our mistakes, and the earth thrown into our wells by enemies are actually tools used by God to protect and expand us, What current famine or conflict in your life might actually be the very mechanism of your own abundance?
That's the question. Is the dirt in your well actually forcing you to move to your Rehoboth?
For more spiritual resources, visit lokaken.ai.